David here with Figboot on pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a pen from the Edison Pen Company that is one of their most recent additions to their signature line, which is called the Jameson, with the distinguishing feature of this pen being a rather large number 8 nib. I am a big fan of big nibs, so I was anxious to get my hands on this one. What I am going to do today is go over the parts and features of this intriguing offering, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to Edison for providing this pen on loan for review. Now, a little bit behind the scenes here at Figboot Inc., a little inside baseball. Now, I say on loan because what Brian Gray, the gentleman behind Edison Pen Company, has always done is that he has sent me pens on loan for review, but with the option of me potentially purchasing it in case I didn't want to send it back. And come to find out, lo and behold, it is no surprise that I have yet to return any of the pens he has sent me. I think it just might be a way for him to get an easy sale, and I think I'm catching on to his little racket that he has going on here. Or maybe I'm just a sucker for a good pen, and Edison certainly makes good pens. Spoiler alert, Brian won't be receiving this pen back either. If you are not familiar with Edison, they are based out of Milan, Ohio, which is the boyhood home of Thomas Edison, and Mr. Edison serves as the inspiration behind the name of the company. I would categorize Edison as a medium-sized pen company with a small-sized attitude. And what I mean by that is that while over the years, as their production and facilities have grown significantly, Brian has always done a great job with his quality assurance and ensuring that every single pen that leaves his shop meets his high standards. He especially takes pride in the quality of his nibs. He studied under Richard Bender, and every pen which leaves his shop is tested and tuned. So when you receive an Edison pen, while they do flush the pen out, there might be a small amount of condensation inside the cap or barrel, which isn't a big thing, but might be a bit surprising if you're not familiar with the overall production quality assurance practices of some pen companies. Okay, that intro was a bit longer than usual, so let's get to a pen. It did arrive with some documentation. It was just a nice letter from Brian, and you could really tell that Brian and his team care about each of their pens. Inside the box, there is a few things. Let's slide this off. There was a few things. There is a sticker. There was a bookmark. There was a metal bookmark. I've used one of these as an ornament on a Christmas tree for many years. And then there was also a pad of paper that they make in-house. They don't make the paper themselves, they just bind them into these notepads. It also arrives with a little wooden and branded pen stand, which is a unique little included extra. Now, the great thing about ordering a Jameson, as well as most other pens from Edison, is that you can have them made with the resin of your choosing. They have a few examples of different resins on their site for the Jameson, but essentially, if Brian has the resin, then he can make the pen out of it. And here is what I chose. This is the Edison Jameson made with Jonathan Brooks Primary Manipulation 3.5. Now, I have a number of pens made from various versions of primary manipulation, but this is my first with 3.5. I would have to say that 3.5 and 4 are probably my favorites. I'll show you how it looks compared to PM1 in the size comparisons, but the color transitions and overall tone of this resin is much more like wispy and smoothed out, rather than the stark transitions and bolder, more solid colors of PM1. This material truly has a rainbow of colors. Name a somewhat primary color and it is included in here at some point. And with this material, no two pens will ever look the same. There is a great deal of variance between the blanks. This pen is made from alumilite, which is a form of resin. Now, something to be aware of, the heat deflection temperature of alumilite is about 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 57 degrees Celsius. This means that if your pen is exposed to temperatures in this range or higher for an extended period of time, your pen could potentially warp. So unless you live in Death Valley, essentially you just don't want to leave your pen sitting in your car on a hot day. Okay, let's take a look at the parts and features of this pen. The top of the cap is flat. On my model here, I believe the end piece is not PM 3.5. It's a nice translucent purple that matches well with the other color palette found in the rest of the pen. This transitions into the clip. The Jameson has a couple of new features previously unseen on Edison pens, and this is one of them. It's a new clip design for the company. It's a bit low profile and not especially bendy, but it does function well in materials of varying thicknesses. The cap angles up at a very slight angle. At the end, you will find another new feature, which is this band design. This is the first time Edison has featured a non-captured cap band. I'll show you an example during the size comparisons of what that means, but a captured center band would be one where there is like resin on either side of it, as opposed to it being at the end of the cap. This band is brass. It angles down slightly as it transitions from the cap to the barrel, and that transition is a bit on the medium to large side. The barrel is straight for about 1.5 inches before tapering down, and at the end of the barrel, like the top of the cap, it is flat. I do like how the material here at the end is a bit translucent, which is a bit of the luck of the draw in regard to the variety contained within this resin. Now, this barrel is engraved. When Brian was making this pen, he asked if I wanted the engraving to be more prominent and filled or more subtle. He did warn that the subtle engraving is barely noticeable, but that is what I went with. And he was telling the truth. The only way for me to really read it is to have the light hit it just right. It is a quality engraving, but true to Brian's description, it is very subtle. It's one of those things to where it's nice to have a choice, to have the ability to customize your pen to your personal tastes and preferences. The cap twists off with just over one rotation, and underneath we have a real highlight of this pen, which is this large stainless steel number 8 nib. Now, in his creation of this design, it was Brian's intention to really hide a lot under this cap. From the exterior, the pen really doesn't appear like it would have this large of a nib in size, so it's a big surprise. I've seen it before where there's a nice larger pen and then you take off the cap and you're presented with a nib that just seems a little bit too small in comparison to the body. But Brian wanted to provide the opposite feeling here. He wanted a smaller pen with a larger nib. Now, I wouldn't categorize this pen as small. It's more on the medium size, but it's certainly one that you wouldn't expect to have a large number 8 nib. The nib is adorned with the Edison Pen Company nib light bulb logo. On a side note, I used this logo in a video I posted a number of years ago where I created mosaics of Fountain Pen Company logos out of 600 Rubik's Cubes. I'll put a link to that video in the notes below if you wanted to check it out. And here's a look at the low profile ebonite feed. It has an M on it to indicate that this is a medium nib. The section is another new element for an Edison pen. It's significantly longer than what you'll find on most of their other pens. It begins with a raised ring and then angles up just slightly before a step up to the cap and the remainder of the barrel. I do care for this section. It's a bit girthier than standard Edison sections, and the additional length really helps accommodate a large variety of grip styles. The Jameson is plenty long enough to use unposted. The cap posts fairly deep, and the angled cap band helps minimize the transition between the cap and the barrel, making it comfortable if that portion should rub up against the inside of your hand. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. With the solid construction of this barrel and lack of internal metal parts, with the appropriate amount of silicone grease, this pen should be fine to eyedropper if you should so choose. The Edison Jameson is available through the Edison Company site. I will put a link to it in the notes below, and it retails for $325. If you would care to have this pen as a draw filler as opposed to the cartridge converter, that option is available as well, but comes at an additional cost of $100. I feel that $325 is a reasonable price for what you receive with this pen. You will receive essentially what is a custom pen made to your specifications with an intriguing design and a large number 8 nib that's a lot of fun to write with. Made from the material of your choosing. The pen, not the nib. Like I said up front, I will be purchasing this pen so Brian won't be getting it back. So his devious scheme has worked on me yet again. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Okay, here we have a closer look at the Edison Jameson with that PM 3.5 material. I just think the color combinations on here are outstanding. I mentioned I'd show some comparison with some of the other material. This is a PM1, so you can see how the colors in this PM1 are a little bit more stark and clear as opposed to those on the 3.5, which are a little bit more wispy. And then I have a couple of pens from Enso, which are using the PM4. And so those are PM4s. And then also I have another pen from Edison, which is using the PM4. So you can see that all three of these are using the PM4, which is slightly different. I'd say the 4 is a little bit more wispy than the 3.5, but then you can see how that they compare to the 1. I like them all. In regard to some other Edison pens, this is the Herald, and then this one here is the Glenmont. And then finally we have a Schoen Design Ultim. And the reason why I showed the Schoen Design Ultim, because it again is a pen that is a rather small pen, but then packs a rather large nib, to where this one is affixed with a number 8 Bach nib. So just like this one, when you open it up, it just has, I like it when it's facing that way when it comes out, just because it looks so huge. But you can see the difference between the number 8 Magna Carta nib and the number 8 Bach. The Magna Carta is actually slightly larger. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, here it is with the Herald. And then here it is with a Leonardo Momento Zero Grande. And then finally, here it is with the Collier Grande. Okay, so here we have the writing sample for the Edison Jameson. And this is a medium stainless steel number 8 nib. And the ink I'm using is one of my favorite purple inks, which is Mont Blanc, Beatles, Psychedelic, Purple. This is what the ink looks like. It's a little bit on the lighter side of purple, as opposed to something like Birmingham Andy Warhol Pop Art Purple. And then there's Lamy Dark Lilac, and this is the original Dark Lilac. And this is what the smaller bottles of Mont Blanc ink look like. Okay, here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This nib falls under my personal preferences. It is very thick and juicy, lays down a nice fat line. You can get a little line variation out of here. You're not going to flex it a ton, but it does lay down a healthy amount of ink. In regard to reverse writing, it is a little bit sharp, but it does lay down a nice extra fine line. In regard to some fast writing, it's a very smooth nib. And the feed keeps up just fine. So there we have the Edison Jameson with its number 8 nib. I think this is a really nice addition to the Edison lineup. It has some new features to make it stand out a little bit. And as I'd mentioned many times, I'm a big fan of this number 8 nib. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.